manapot laan kalibun sigagay kagal kalibun hulung sa amina naman puto uyu sengan.
The Philippines' indigenous peoples, coming from far and wide, have been reunited yet again. The country's National Commission for Culture and the Arts, or NCCA, has succeeded in bringing together this multitude, becoming more and more aware that unifying does not necessarily mean singularifying. For the Filipino can be united, but the nation is, in fact, far from being singular. The Filipino is as diverse as the very islands they call home. Nevertheless, across this rich tapestry, there would always run a cultural thread that would somehow link and bind the diversity together. To illustrate further, the word Dayaw is one such thread. Dayaw is a term shared by many different tongues across the archipelago. To the Ilocano of northern Philippines, it means honor or pride. To the Bisaya of the Central Islands, it is appreciation or recognition. To the Tigwahanon of the South, Dayaw means to show off or parade. In all its linguistic incarnations, the connotation of Dayaw is celebratory. As such, and as a word encompassing the Filipino multicultura, it was chosen to embody this year's Indigenous Peoples Gathering, touted to be the biggest and in many ways, the most daring. The NCCA has organized several other Indigenous peoples' convergences in the past, described as roaming festivals, and taking the identity of its chosen home base. There was Mindanao's Kalimudan, or gathering. There was Northern Philippines' Timpuyog, or unity. And Central Philippines' Dungog, dignity. Already the fourth in the NCCA's revitalized editions of the Philippines IP festivals, Dayaw struck with an unexpected force, taking urban Manila, the national capital, by surprise. Around 30 ethno-linguistic groups out of the country's legion of almost 100 rose to herald their presence into the Filipino consciousness. From the Philippines' powerful north, Luzon, Ifugao of Kiangan, Ifugao, Aita of Bataan, Malaweg of Cagayan Valley, Bugkalod of Nueva Vizcaya, Gatdang of Mountain Province, Kalinga of Kalinga, Ibaloy of Benguet, Dumagat of Quezon. From the Central Archipelagic region, Mangyan of Mindoro, Jama Mapun of Palawan, Panay Bukidnon of Capiz, Bukidnon of Negros, Palawan of Palawan, and the Ati of Aklan, Negros, Iloilo, Guimaras, and Capiz. From southern Philippines, the crowd was a mix of secular lumads and peoples who have reverted to Islam. Blaan of Balut Island, Sarangani, Davao del Sur. Tiboli of Lake Cebu, South Cotabato. Teduray of Maguindanao. Camayo of Agusan del Sur. Mangwangan of Davao del Norte. Manobo of Bukidnon. Bagobo of Davao City. Iranon of Maguindanao. Sangir of Balut Island, Sarangani, Davao del Sur. Subanon of Zamboanga del Sur. Mamanwa of Surigao del Norte. Tausug of Jolo Sulu. Kagan of Davao Oriental. Joining them in lively celebration are the ethno-linguistic groups of the Visayas lowlands, who have embraced the pronouncedly West-acculturated way of life, nonetheless, still as Filipino as their native brethren. Some IP delegations have faithfully participated in festivals past and have now brought along their younger kindred. In their hearts, they have the best of intentions.
Mayroon din kaming kultura na ipaglaban namin mula noon hanggang ngayon. Hindi pa rin namin iniwanan kasi gusto pa namin na pati kabataan namin yun pa rin ang matanim sa isipan nila at magagawa po nila ang ginagawa namin ngayon.
Many other indigenous groups, otherwise shy and hesitant, have followed suit, having been emboldened by their fellows who have seen the positive impact of the festival on the cultural education of metropolitan Filipinos who, unfortunately, know too little of them.
Nararamdaman namin na yung partisipasyon namin sa pamahalaan na kinikilala din nila yung aming kultura na gustong paunlarin talaga. Kung saan hindi naman na ito napapansin nung matagal, nahikayat kami talagang sumangkot sa mga gawain na kahit medyo mahirapan kami, pero gusto namin talaga na makita ito ng buong bansa at ng buong daigdig. Na meron kaming sariling kultura, may dignidad, may karapatan.
As it turns out, this exposure helped educate not only the so-called mainstream population. The indigenous peoples, long been separated by territorial inaccessibility, and a few of them surviving without the aid of mass media, have been thriving in relative seclusion and have never heard of others who live like them, albeit miles or several seas away.
Nabigyan kami ng pagkakataon na makilala lahat ng, kasi sa amin, kasi akala namin kami lang eh. Sa ganitong pagkakataon, parang festival, ganyan, parang doon namin nalaman na ay, hindi pala tayo nag-iisa, marami pala tayo.
Marami pala kami. And then when we meet them, parang we feel at home. Parang hindi kami ibang-iba. We share our instruments. It's parallel. Everything is parallel. Planting ritual, wedding ritual, Thanksgiving ritual. Parang pareho. Yung mga katulad na sa Northern, ganyan, marami akong, ang narinig ko lang, Ipugaw, Igorot, Libandon, wala na. Yan pala, may mga gandang pa, mayroon pang kalinga, marami pa.
During these convergence festivals, they finally realize that they are not alone.
Pinapasukan ng mga mining. So ano ang natanggap sa mga stakeholder doon? Mayroon lang silang 1%. Kawawa.
The Philippine Indigenous Peoples Festival has always highlighted the biggest issues confronting the IP communities, issues which have at times become so major as to push their ways of living and beliefs to mere commodification, or worse, near extinction. This time, Dayaw focused on a different kind of conflict, that of man versus nature. The effects of climate change have become a threat to the continuous ability of indigenous peoples to create art, produce crops, or simply live life as they know it. Hence, this festival's theme is Kalikhasan, a fusion of Tagalog words likha, meaning to create, and kalikasan, or natural environment. Anthropologist Eufrasio Abaya, who coined the word, elaborates.
Kalikhasan is a term that I thought might capture this compelling issue of climate change and how that relates to the idea of cultural creativity of the indigenous peoples. Because prior to these drastic changes in the environment, they do have relatively stable kind of flow in how they do agriculture and how they deal with the environment. And there are rituals that are associated with these activities. Now, because of this climate change, things have really reconfigured the way they interpret nature. How will they get the resources? At what time of the year? How will they grow their crops, etc.?
Hewing closely into the Kalikhasan theme and introducing other aspects of the native Filipino to the Manileño are a number of academic and interactive exchanges, highlights of the ongoing Convergence Festival. In the National Museum of the Filipino People, Dayaw becomes cerebral and contemplative. Prominent anthropologists, sociologists, cultural workers, and guests from around the world flock together in the multi-day conference entitled Suri, Kalikhasan in Flux. Sulyap sa Tinubuang Kalikhasan is a series of exhibitions around the metro, displaying creative craft and industry, along with photos. Especially fascinating are the demonstrations of some local masters of traditional art, basketry, mat making, pottery, and weaving. Outside the somewhat scholarly and solemn corners of the museum, the IP delegations took to the streets, eager to parade with pride along the frenzied roads and corridors of busy Manila. Palabas, in Dayaw sa Kalikhasan, is where the indigenous peoples engage Manila in highly energized alternative education. Ready with several montages of dances, songs, and skits that illustrate rituals and everyday life, the delegates regaled their captive audiences, not only in Rizal Park, the main venue, but also those in schools, government offices, and even in the most unlikely places of all, the shopping malls. But what is alternative, if not daring? In the end, there will always be the question, why is there a need for an indigenous people's convergence? The oft-repeated answer is education. Truth be told, this reason alone is profound enough, for most of the country have yet to learn about the indigenous communities and their maverick genius.
Hanggang dito sa uncle po, dito po yan talaga. Kailangan hindi makita yung tight, kasi pag makita po yun, ibig sabihin either you're a slave, para kung maiutos sa'yo, hindi ka mabasa, nagmamadali ka.
Galing kami summer, makikita nyo the way namin, paano namin ginagawa yung pag-embroider sa mat. We are using this one as a needle. Ito naman yung buri. Ito yung pinapasok namin dito para pag-design.
This one has three colors, the white, the red, and black.
Okay.
White stands for peace, and red for bravery, and black is for death.
The pride in themselves is evident.
Siyempre sa amin, kapag naipakita namin yung aming kultura, yung aming kaugalian, ay nagiging proud kami.
This has been a governing force in the people's will to continue on with their heritage, which, in several points throughout history, were dismissed as uncivilized. This pride has emboldened them to pass on their ways to the next generations through schools of living traditions, or SLTs.
Para po sa amin, importante yung pag-aralan namin yung SLT dahil minsan po nawawala yung mga namana namin sa ninuno namin, kaya kailangan po naming pag-aralan po.
Kasi na-influence na kami ng mga makabagong buhay, ganun. Kaya we are very glad nandito yung NCCA, may SLT kami, na yung SLT sa amin is yung Blaan Traditional Dances and Musical Instrument Playing. Kasi pawala na eh. Tapos only few masters linger as of now.
In many ways, the Philippines is now in an era of deeper understanding of the plight and wisdom of the pure native. Native has almost ceased to bear a negative connotation, a big reason for a continued celebration of life and the constant sustenance of an introspective worldview. For this, Dayaw as a positive metonym of celebration has become the most apt, if not the best word, to symbolize the country's emerging cultural trajectory. A spirited journey back to the manifold Filipino identity and back to the genius of all things Indigenous.